I'm Anna Hoffman, and welcome to this Data Exposed exclusive. We are here at the PASS Data Community Summit in Seattle, Washington, and we are kicking things off with our theater booth sessions. And the first one of the day is with Raj. Raj, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Thank you. Let me introduce myself first. My name is Raj Puchiraju, and I'm a principal program manager in Azure Arc Data. So today, the session that I'm sharing is how to really manage, secure, and protect your SQL servers at scale using Azure.
Awesome, cool. And one of the things I think would be great to kick off with is kind of this decision tree of how you decide what to use.
Yeah, so Azure really offers wide variety of deployment options, especially for SQL Server, to give the flexibility. But I think one way that the customers can really make a decision, whether they want to migrate to the cloud or use any of these connected experiences to manage their SQL servers is, if the workload is ready to migrate to the cloud, if there are no blockers, your first bet is migrate to Azure, right? If you cannot really migrate your workload, then if it is a legacy workload, you can really connect the SQL servers to Azure using Arc-enabled SQL Server, and you can really start managing their SQL servers from the cloud, at scale. You can manage, protect, and as well as secure, right? Or if you already invested in your infrastructure and you cannot really migrate to the cloud, but you really like the platform as a service kind of capabilities that you really bring them to the your own infrastructure, then we also have the offerings like Arc-enabled managed instance, Arc-enabled PostgreSQL, that you can really bring the platform as a capabilities like built-in disaster recovery to your infrastructure.
Cool, awesome. And then today, what are we gonna focus on?
Today we're going to be more focusing on Arc-enabled SQL servers where you cannot really migrate or you cannot really modernize, but at the same time you really want to outsource your manageability aspects to the cloud.
Right.
So I'm going to talk about how to do that and what the specific capabilities that are offered.
Cool, awesome. Well, Raj, I'm excited to take a look.
Excellent. Welcome to my session, Manage Your SQL Server Data Estate from Azure. So today we are going to be doing few concepts and as well as the few demos. So when we talk to the enterprise customers, one of the learnings that we got is that a lot of these customers are really adopting hybrid and as well as the multi-cloud strategies is because of several reasons. Either it could be because of the compliance reasons, or the vendor applications not ready to migrate to the cloud. So there are various reasons, or they might have already invested in a lot of the infrastructure and they just want to leverage that infrastructure to host the SQL Server, the database assets. But that's a good pattern that we are seeing it, but at the same time, it also puts some challenges. The challenges are really, how do I really manage all these assets centrally? How do I really get the inventory of them? How do I really get dependencies of those workloads? And how do we really secure them centrally? And how do I really put some standard policies to really secure and protect my environments? So these are the various challenges that our customers really having. And then Microsoft has got several offerings that really help you to address those challenges. And especially if you really look at the SQL Server family, we have multiple offerings to give you the flexibility in wherever you really want to deploy your SQL Server to meet your workloads. So this simple algorithm, or you can call the flow chart, would really help you which of these SQL Server deployment options that you really want to choose. So basically, if your workloads are ready to migrate to the cloud and there are no blockers, I think the best bet is to migrate to Azure, right? You can really deploy your applications in Azure Web App Services, and as well as you can deploy your SQL Server databases in Azure SQL Managed Instance or Azure SQL Database. So that's the very first choice for you. If your workloads are ready to migrate, go and then migrate to the public cloud. In the case where the workloads cannot be migrated to the public cloud, there are a couple of options. The options are, if your workloads are legacy applications, and then there are kind of dependent on the reporting services, analysis services, and you cannot really, move those applications. At that point of time, what you can do is you can connect those SQL servers to Azure so that you can really centrally manage all those SQL servers from the Azure. Not only that you can be able to manage, but also you can secure, protect, and govern those SQL servers from the Azure, irrespective of where your SQL servers are deployed, whether they are deployed on-prem or whether they are deployed in the other clouds, you can be able to manage SQL servers from the Azure. So that's where I'm going to be focusing in next 20 minutes or so to really showcase the ways that you can really manage your SQL servers using the Azure capabilities. The other deployment options that we have is that you really want to modernize in your existing infrastructure and you really want to bring platform service kind of experiences to your workloads. Or you really want to get the built-in disaster recovery, high availability, everything isn't built in. Because you cannot really come to the cloud, we are coming to you. We are coming to your doorsteps. And those are the offerings we call Azure Arc-enabled SQL Server and Azure Arc-enabled application services, and as well as Azure Arc-enabled PostgreSQL. So depending on how you really want to fine-tune your applications, you can really bring the cloud experience to your infrastructure itself. So these are the three ways that you can really decide which workloads are going to go to the public cloud or which workloads that you really want to manage using our connected experiences from Azure, and then which of those workloads that you really want to deploy in your own infrastructure by bringing in the platform as a service kind of capabilities to your own infrastructure. So today, I'm going to show some demos how you can really leverage Arc-enabled SQL Server to manage your SQL servers. So like I said, to go a little more deeper, when you say Arc-enabled SQL Server, it means that you are bringing all the manageability capabilities that Azure offers to your existing on-premises environment, wherever your SQL servers exist today. You're bringing all those Azure capabilities to manage, protect, and secure your SQL servers. Whereas, if you really want to modernize your database workloads in your own infrastructure, and then you can bring the platform as a services to your infrastructure using the Arc-enabled SQL Server, the Arc-enabled managed instance, and as well as the Arc-enabled PostgreSQL. So these are the three different options that we have. So with Arc-enabled SQL servers, when you connect your SQL Server data estate to the cloud, you can get the inventory of all those SQL servers in a single pane of glass. So you can get all those SQL servers in a single place, and at the same time, you can be able to go and then manage all those SQL servers as well. And then you can also protect your SQL servers and govern your SQL servers policies using the Purview by integrating with the Azure Purview services. And then you can also secure your SQL servers using some of the cloud-native secure services like Microsoft Defender. So that way, you can really bring the power of Azure to your on-premises environment to begin with. Let's look at the demo, few demos here. At first, I talked about the inventory. So let me go to the inventory. When you really connect your SQL servers to Azure, it will create two resources. One is Arc Server and then Arc SQL Server. If you take a look at it, Arc Server resource, it will really tell you the computer name, the operating system, the version that the server is running, and then you can also enable auto updates to it. You can also start monitoring the performance of your server from the Azure itself. And then there is another resource called Arc-enabled SQL Server, so that you can start managing your SQL Server using that. And this is the list where you can really see all Arc-enabled SQL servers in a single list, regardless where these SQL servers are deployed. As long as you connect them to Azure SQL, you will get a single view of that inventory. And then we recently added a new capability called Database as a Resource. So you can take a look at it, not just the SQL Server instances, but all the databases that are hosted on those SQL servers. You can really find out in a single list. And then you can also be able to go and then monitor their database as well. Now, if you really want to customize the inventory, that you want to really get various dimensions through your inventory, all these servers and resources are integrated with an Azure Graph. so that you can really write some custom queries with Azure Graph to really get the inventory or insights from your inventory basically, right? For example, I do have a sample query here, which is really looking at, give me the count, the different compatibility levels that my databases are configured. And I really want to understand, what is the count of each of these databases belong to a specific compat level. For example, if your databases are running low compat level, at some point of time, you want to upgrade them, right? In order to do that, you need to really understand how many of those databases exist. So using this simple query that you can do with Azure Graph, you can get that list. So that's the beauty of, enabling the Azure services to manage your SQL servers regardless where those SQL servers are being deployed. Now I'm going to be moving to the next concept actually. You might have seen in the keynote address, one of the challenges that our customers are having is that not having a consistent billing mechanism. So now, by enabling your servers to Arc, you can really have a consistent, cloud-based pricing models and as well as cloud-based billing, billing models that you can have a consistency across your SQL servers and other assets which are deployed, anywhere in your own infrastructure or in a different cloud. You can really have a consistent billing model by enabling pay-as-you-go. So we released the pay-as-you-go new capability with the SQL Server 2022 going into the general availability. So this model can be really helpful to you in various cases. So for example, if you have a seasonal workload and you really want to pay for only the peak times, you can really enable this model so that you only get paid for the amount of time you are really using your SQL Server. The same way, if you are really running your SQL servers on other clouds other than Azure, and you want to have a consistent billing model, you can enable pay-as-you-go as well, so that you will have your billing in managed by Azure itself, right? So these are the various use cases that you can really, leverage the pay-as-you-go, the new capability that we released today with SQL Server 2022, right? This also helps you to give a flexibility where you can really switch between your perpetual licensing model to pay-as-you-go, wherever, whenever you really want. Now, let's really talk about how do you really secure your SQL Server from Azure. There are multiple secure options. One is you can really integrate your SQL Server 2022 with Azure Active Directory so that you can have a single, authentication mechanisms. And also you have a single sign-on and as well as the multi-factor authentication that you can enable with SQL Server. With Azure Purview, you can really integrate with Azure Purview to really govern your SQL servers. You can really apply the cloud standard policies. You can extend to the SQL servers which are running outside of Azure as well. And again, the Defender, Microsoft Defender, really going to secure your SQL Server assets by scanning the SQL servers and finding out all the possibility for attacks and as well as the vulnerabilities. Now, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to give a quick demo on how the Defender and as well as the assessments are going to really help you to secure your SQL servers. So now what I'm going to be doing is I already have a SQL Server which is already connected to Arc. So you can see that as a resource on the cloud. Now, you can see there are two capabilities here. One is the Microsoft Defender for Cloud and then Environment Health. Let's first examine the Microsoft Defender. So the Microsoft Defender for SQL Server continuously scans your SQL Server environment and find out any vulnerabilities, any attacks that might be happening, and then provide a mitigation steps, or sometimes it even mitigate with just a point, with a click. So you can auto mitigate, or it will give you a guidance that you can be able to go and then mitigate as well. So it will really protect your SQL servers, basically safeguard your SQL servers using Microsoft Defender. Originally, Microsoft Defender was developed for resources which are in the cloud, but now with Arc-enabled SQL Server, we extend that capability to SQL servers which are running outside of Azure as well, right? So let's examine a couple of the security issues that have been raised. For example, it says that SQL Server machines should be, there are some issues that are reported here, and when you take a look at it, it kind of identifies that SA login should be disabled. You know that SA is a super user on a SQL Server environment. And then Microsoft strongly recommends to disable that. And then XP CMD shell, which really help you to run some operating system commands within the context of SQL Server. Unless you really use it, we don't really recommend to enable XP CMD shell. So these are the, proactively the Arc SQL Server go on and monitor your SQL Server and really identify some of those issues and then provide you the mitigation steps. And the issues that are reported in the Defender are also tightly integrated with the event management as well, with the Microsoft Sentinel. You can really manage these issues that are raised and then start mitigating those as well with that tight integration. Now let's take a look at the best practices assessment. So I'm going to go back to the overview here. And I want to introduce the environment health, which is also called as a SQL Server assessment. The SQL Server assessment continuously scans your SQL servers and identifies if there are any risks that you might be running into it. Are there any configurations that are not really following through some of these best practices? The way that we collected all these best practices through our support experience with a lot of the mission critical or business critical applications with the customers. So we gathered all that knowledge and then provided you that as in terms of the rules so that we can really assess your SQL Server and then see if you are also running into any risks so that you can really proactively address those issues that are raised, and hence you can really bring your SQL Server to a healthy state. And as you see here, we look into 360 degrees view of your SQL Server. We look into your high availability, we look into your performance, SQL Server configurations, everything as a whole. And then for each of these categories, we also give you the rating in terms of how healthy you are. And then we also identify the specific risk items and also give you the score for those risk items so that you can really prioritize mitigating those. So for example, anything that is being highlighted in red here, the issues, for instance, the XP CMD shell, we talked about that in the vulnerability assessment as well. So that is 3.9 score, which is in red. That means is that it is the highest priority that you want to mitigate that. So that way we also help you to prioritize to bring your SQL Server to healthy state, right? So that way Arc-enabled SQL Server really help you to secure, manage, protect, and as well as govern your SQL servers from the Azure at scale. Now, how does it work actually? Briefly, I'm going to touch upon how does it work. How does it, the whole Arc-enabled connected SQL servers are going to work? So pretty simple. And the very first step is that you need to enable to the Arc server at first. So there will be a resource called Arc server resource out there. Once Arc server is there, the Arc agent will be installed on your SQL Server instance or a server. And then the next step is you also going to be installing the SQL Server extension on top of it so that we can really start managing your SQL Server instances. And then you can really enable some of these capabilities that we just talked about, right? You can enable Defender. You can also enable the SQL Server assessment, and more capabilities are coming in future. For example, auto backups, and then Purview integration so that you can really govern your SQL Server. All these capabilities are going to come and then will really help you to manage your SQL servers at scale. And I just want to conclude this session by listing out all the different sessions that we have in hybrid domain. So I'm going to go very deep into some of these demos that I showed you today in my tomorrow breakout session as well. And I hope you guys come and visit and start managing your SQL servers at scale from Azure. And I'll be here for a while. Thank you so much. And I'll be here for a while to answer any of your questions.
So that was a great session by Raj. Raj, thanks again so much for joining us. To our viewers who are joining us later online, be sure to check the description with links to learn more. Like this video if you liked it. Leave us a comment, let us know what you think. And we hope to see you next time on the next Data Exposed exclusive.
Thank you so much for your time. Thanks, Anna.